Hey, I'm Kevin Fontenot, and I'm here with Scott Magdalein. We're your hosts of the Thriving Ministry Teams podcast, where we're talking about all things related to church leadership, development, discipleship, and training. And today, I'm really excited about the topic that we're going to be going over. We're going to be talking about goal setting, something that I really enjoy doing, something that I've been practicing more and more this year. But before we dive in, I wanted to share a little bit of a special offer with you guys, the listeners of the Thriving Ministry Teams podcast. We're giving 50% off your first month of TrainUp. And if you're not familiar with TrainUp, it's the company behind this podcast. Scott and I work there all day, every day, helping church leaders to better equip their teams with online training. We do this with a simple online training tool with over 600 library videos. They're really simple, practical, easy to use that you can import with a single click, and also unlimited room for customization with your own videos, with adding in custom questions, things like that. So if you want to try it out, you can get 50% off your first month of TrainUp. Just use the coupon code THRIVING. Go to trainedup.church, use that coupon code THRIVING, get 50% off that first month, and you'll be good to go. But let's go ahead and shift and talk about what we're going to be talking about today, which is goal setting. And this is something that, I really like to discuss, like to talk about, because so many people are kind of apprehensive to this topic. And in the past, I've been apprehensive to it, and I've kind of gone the way of just choosing not to set goals. But this year is one of the first years where I've really gone in and set personal goals for myself that I think that I'll actually achieve at least the majority of them that I've created. Created about 7 or 8 healthy goals for myself. Some of those related to health, my relationship with my wife, my spiritual health, as well as some financial goals as well. Did you create any goals this year, Scott?
Personal goals. I created, so my personal goals tend to be discipline oriented instead of like reaching marks oriented. So one of my goals is to run 3 times a week, and I've done pretty good. There's been a few weeks when I've gotten down to 2 times a week, but there's also been a few weeks when I've done 4, just because of the way that like a running schedule works out, and doing runs on the weekend and stuff. So a running schedule has been one, and I've made it. I don't know if it's a goal, but a new discipline of breakfast is a vegetable drink, which was really hard in the beginning because I hate vegetables, and the drink itself tastes like grass. Like it tastes like if you're a baseball person and the smell of a baseball field has been like freshly cut, and you walk out there and it smells so good. But like imagine that becomes a drink and you'd like drink it, and that's exactly what it tastes like. Which it was really rough the first in January, but now it's like my morning breakfast. So which is great because it's all sorry to get off on this tangent. It's replaced coffee for me in the morning. I still drink a coffee in the afternoon, but it kind of has this pick me up kind of thing.
Kick me up. I like that.
Mornings. So yeah, but my goals are typically more like discipline related rather than like some metric out in the future. So.
Gotcha. Cool. And I think a lot of people kind of have those discipline-based goals that they're trying to hit, and it's a little bit more difficult to create kind of the aspirational, specific goals for, some of the things that you're trying to do. We at TrainUp, we have some goals that we've created for ourselves as far as what we want to do this year for, the amount of people that we're serving, the amount of resources that we're putting out. And we love creating those goals. But a lot of people are apprehensive to the thought of goal setting in general because they just see it as an exercise. It doesn't really work. They've set goals in the past, don't see any progress about it. They set these goals and nothing ultimately changes. And, I'd love to hear your thoughts on why you think most ministry leaders set goals and nothing kind of happens with them.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the number one reason is because goals typically are set as part of some exercise from a boss, as an assignment from a boss, and they don't mean much to the ministry leader themselves. And so those kind of goals, if they don't mean anything to you, if they're not tied to something that really you care about, then you have no motivation to reach toward those goals. So in the past, I've set goals related to personally, I've set goals related to weight loss, but I don't really care about weight loss. I care about being healthy. I care about not being winded when I play with my kids. I care about being able to, go for a swim and be able to make it all the way across the lake kind of thing. I don't really care so much about my waist size, although, I guess I'm supposed to, and that's correlated. But so which is why in the past, my goals that are related to things I don't care about, I never reach them. But goals that are related to things I care about, I tend to work harder at them. And I tend to be reminded of that goal because I care about the thing that the goal is related to. And so like number one pitfall in goal setting for ministry leaders is setting goals around things you don't care about. So like, for example, in ministry, I know we all care about like the number of people in our ministry, but some people, that's not a motivating factor for them. Like maybe a children's ministry leader, it's difficult to really make change or to really increase the number of children in your ministry because it's related to so many other factors in your church. And so the number of kids in your ministry might not be something that is particularly motivating to you. But there are things that can impact that, and impact that number. So whereas, a traditional goal might be to set, I'm going to add, 10%, grow 10% in our children's ministry this year. That number is such a nebulous kind of like difficult thing to like visualize. Whereas a goal that might impact that would be helping to increase the number of mentions about our children's ministry, in online, and how people talk about our children's ministry online. So that, relates to how we train our volunteers to make sure that they, our parents have a good experience, and how we structure our children's time to make sure that the kids are just super stoked to come back and they beg their parents for it. So there are peripheral goals that you can set that impact higher level goals, even the goals that you might not care about. So those are just a couple of things that I would say make it hard.
Yeah, I think that's a really good one as far as, people setting goals they don't really care about or that don't really mean a lot to them. Kind of piggybacking off of that, I think another one of the pitfalls that normally happens is people will set the goals and they just set them and forget them. They don't think about them. They write down a piece of paper, they hand it to their boss, something like that, or they, started at the very beginning of the year with a natural shift in time, and they get excited about the goals for maybe a week or two, and then ultimately it's just a piece of paper in their desk or a note on their computer, and they never think about it again. And that's been a big shift that I've had to do in my own life, of thinking about these goals that I'm setting for myself, instead of just thinking about them, 12 months from now, of the goal that I want to be at and the things that I'm trying to achieve. I have to really personify that in every month, every week, set those, kind of micro goals leading up to it. Because then it helps me to see if I'm on track, if I need to double down on something, if I need to put more effort into it, if maybe I need to ease up on something so I can kind of shift my focus and attention to some of those other goals. And I think that's a big one that we typically overlook a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. I call those runaway goals. Those are the goals that are too far out in the future to feel like the pressure of trying to reach it. And so that's a great tactic. Even what you mentioned is like breaking that like far away goal, because some goals have to be far away. Like if I want to be able to run a half marathon, that's like a long way off goal, but like, and it's hard to visualize that. But if I make that, well, this month I'm going to run a 5K. And so I'm going to work my way up to running a 5K, not like zooming through a 5K, just finishing a 5K. And then like I do that, and then I can say, well, I'm going to run 5 miles by the next month. Then I'm working my way toward that runaway goal. But if that runaway goal is the only goal, then man, it's so easy to get discouraged on the way to it. It's just too far away. And often because it's so far away, we set them as like really big goals because we're like, oh, surely in a year I'll be able to run 13 miles. But it's just so hard to eat that elephant, because it's, so far away and so big.
Yeah, definitely. I was listening to a podcast with Michael Hyatt and Donald Miller this past week, and they were kind of talking about goal setting, because I don't know if you know Michael Hyatt, but he's kind of the guru of goal setting. And anytime I hear him talk about, goals and planning, it just kind of gets me a little motivated for some of the things that I want to do in my life. And he was kind of talking about this principle and this idea kind of related to what we're talking about of setting goals too far into the future. Because when we're talking about goals that are super far in the future, we can't really personify them or can't really even grasp their meaning. Because like you said, 13 miles in a year, surely I can do that. But that's talking about like a future self that doesn't really impact us today at all, but if I'm thinking about myself 3 months from now, I can still kind of visualize who that person is going to be in 3-4 months. It's a lot harder for me to visualize that person in 7, 8, 9, 12 months from now, because that's a long period of time for us to kind of just skirt through and try and figure out if we can achieve those things or not. And so being able to kind of move them down to that level of 3 months, 4 months, 5 months really allows you to kind of personify that of, who that person's going to be in 3 months, because it's based on those actions today, where, a person in 6, 12 months from now, it's a lot harder to grasp who that's going to be in your life, even when we're talking about ourselves.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One more thing before we jump on to the next kind of move on to the next thing. We're talking about weaknesses or pitfalls of why we miss goals. One more is that it's easier to set lagging goals. So we set goals that are more easily measured at the end of an initiative instead of being able to be measured as you go. And so a good one is, an attendance record or something like that. It's a lagging metric that is indicative of a lot of things that lead up to it. And so that lagging metric is like fun, usually like a vanity, we call it like in the web world, a vanity metric maybe. But it's one of those things where it's a nice to have metric, but there's a lot of valuable metrics that would lead up to it. So it's much more valuable, much more effective to set goals in the things that affect or impact that lagging goal rather than just kind of setting that vanity metric by itself and then forgetting about the things in between it that lead to it.
Yeah, that's really good. You and I were talking a couple of weeks ago about some of the goals that we're trying to do for TrainUp as far as the number of people we're serving and things like that. And you had mentioned that you have a hard time shifting, from estimating to goal setting, and you kind of tend to err on the side of estimating instead of, goal setting. So what's the difference? Why is that important? Talk us through a little bit of that.
Yeah. So and it's probably like a weird bad habit that I picked up at some point where, all right, so the context of this is at the beginning of this year, we were talking about, how many churches can we be serving by the end of the year, like actively serving by the end of the year with our online products and consulting, coaching, that kind of stuff. And my first inclination was to go to our dashboard and see what our growth has been over the last 6 months. And then say, okay, well, if we maintain that growth, then the next 6 months will be here. Okay, so this is our goal. And, based on our past growth, our, future growth is going to be, if it stays the same, that's what our goal is going to be. And that's like, and then of course, Kevin kind of is like, well, that's not a goal. That's an estimate. Like, that's like you just saying, okay, well, I think we're going to be there, rather than saying, I want to be. Like, the whole point of a goal is to push you, right? The whole point of a goal is to like push you beyond what you're just going to naturally do anyway, if you keep doing what you keep doing. So I guess I don't know where it comes from. Maybe it's like a place of safety where, like, if I just like set our goal like within reach of where I can already reach, I know I can reach, then I know that I can hit it. And so that I know that we can have a party at the end of the year versus like, if we set a goal that's too out there, then if we don't hit it, then I'm going to be disappointed. So I guess that's my pitfall as my own like weakness in goal setting, is to set goals that are look more like estimates and that end up being too weak.
Gotcha. I think people typically fall on either side of it. So I typically go on the opposite side of that, where I set these crazy goals for myself that, just seem completely out of reality and out of touch. And so I think we work well together, Scott, because we kind of meet somewhere in the middle on that, where, you don't let me set things that are way too crazy, even though sometimes we set them and are surprised when we actually hit some of those goals.
Now, I was about to say, I was like, okay, you do set some crazy goals, but I will say, when it comes to like guessing or estimating what's going to actually happen, you tend to be right way more often than I'm right. And you tend to be right. And it's surprising to me because you're like on the high side of like estimating how many, people we're going to be able to serve by the end of the month, or how many, demos we're going to do by the end of the month, that kind of stuff. And you're much more accurate, which is surprising to me. Every single time I'm surprised, which is, I guess at some point I'll become not surprised by your accuracy.
Well, I promise it's no sort of witchcraft, so don't try to do any Salem witch trials or anything like me and put me out on a log in a lake or anything like that. I think it's really important for us to set those goals that, maybe don't make a little bit of sense, because goal setting ultimately is, going against what the status quo is, kind of what you talked about. You kind of have the estimate of what's going to happen in the future. Some of those estimates may be a downward trend. They may be, just an equal footing of where you're at now. But then there's the other side of it, where it may be 10%, 20% higher, just naturally based on your growth rate in your organization, some of the goals that you've set, and some of the things that you've seen in the past. And it's really easy for us to naturally just go with those goals. So, we just want to hit that. And kind of the really practical side of that is figure out what that estimated data is going to be in, 6 months from now, a year from now, the time frame of you setting that goal, and add 10 to 20% to it. Don't get super crazy where you're trying to make these goals where they're completely out of reality and they don't have any sort of basis in the real world, but they still need to be a stretch. They need to be something that are aspirational, that we're trying to work towards. They should be something that requires us to grow, not only as an organization, but as individuals as well. And Scott, you've kind of alluded to that aspect of all these little things kind of work together towards us hitting those larger goals that we've set?
Yeah. So for me, like there's a, like, again, I'm by no means like the best goal setter. I have my own like shortcomings when it comes to that, but there are some best practices you can follow that I try to follow myself. I try to remind myself when we're going through these kind of goal setting exercises, even for TrainUp, but also for my church and that sort of thing. So it helps when I am really terrible at goal setting when I don't write things down. So if I just am kind of sitting here and ideating through goal setting, I'm terrible at it because of the way my brain works. I have to write down kind of an outline of what we're trying to accomplish, where we've been, and then again, like one of those things where, okay, I can place an estimate, make an estimate of where we're going to be, and then increase it by 10% or increase it by whatever amount that seems like an appropriate amount that we can reach for. So for me, writing it down helps a lot. It also helps for me to break it down into categories. So like whereas, we may have one big overarching goal, it helps to break it down into different areas that affect that overarching goal. So if as a company, we want to serve, 800 customers by the end of X month, then we would break that down into the number of demos we might be doing and the number of coaching sessions we do and the amount of content we put out and that sort of thing. So it kind of breaks it down into the things that affect that top goal. And then of course for me, this is, I was laughing because this is a kind of inside joke in TrainUp is that I tend to be like a Chicken Little about things. And so we'll set goals and then there'll be stretch goals. And then those goals, like throughout the course of the month or the year or whatever, we are doing well on some weeks. And then we are not doing well on other weeks and it's going down. And I tend to be like, this sky's falling. We're not going to hit our goal. We're not going to hit our goal kind of person. And that really doesn't help anything or anybody. And so like we actually even like in our Slack account, Slack is the tool we use to chat as a team. Kevin made a special Chicken Little emoji that whenever I get negative, he just quietly posts a little Chicken Little emoji. And it reminds me, Scott, you're being negative on like for no reason. So the point of that is to be positive about your goals, because like being negative about the goals is not really going to help anything. Being positive also helps you, to think creatively, helps you to problem solve. Whereas being negative about a goal or what you're trying to reach completely kind of undercuts at the knees any kind of work you're going to do to try and reach that goal.
Yeah, definitely. I love the Chicken Little emoji. I had to use it on myself last week just because I started down about, a certain metric that we were trying to track with Disciple Labs. So I had to use it on myself and kind of reevaluate some of those goals and where we were at as far as hitting some of them. But kind of going along with that, we're talking about best practices now. And that's one of the reasons that I really love doing this podcast, because we're not just talking about theoretical things. We want to talk about, things that you can actually implement. And so I've kind of alluded to this point of setting up, specific goals for yourself, but being able to track them over time and breaking them down into little pieces. And you talked about, the Chicken Little effect, and it's really easy to kind of get down from week to week based on what those numbers are. But one of the things that I found myself doing a lot more with some of the goals that I've set is I've been able to go in and kind of track on a monthly basis how I'm doing. And based on that, I know what type of adjustments I need to make. So one of the things I'm starting to implement now is just kind of doing a little bit of a daily reflection on how things are doing. And then that leads to a weekly reflection and a monthly reflection, just because it allows me to kind of see how I'm trending in certain things. Because it's really easy for us to kind of go the way of, looking back at it 3 months at a time and trying to figure out what went wrong when we don't hit a goal or don't hit a certain metric that we're aiming for. That becomes a lot harder for us to do if we're thinking about it on a daily basis or a weekly basis, because then those things are top of mind for us. We know what we're working towards. We're thinking about those goals every single day. We're thinking about what we can do today. What's the one little thing that you can do today or this week that'll move the needle towards hitting that goal? And that's been one of the biggest best practices that I've implemented in my own life to kind of try and hit goals a little bit better.
Yeah, so that's a good point. And you kind of mentioned that like you have this place where you're able to go back and look at how you're doing at the goals, but the only way you're able to do that if it's written down, and that's perfect, because like you can't keep track of a goal if it's not written. I know it's obvious, but you can't keep track of a goal if it's not written down somewhere, because it's going to be floating in your head somewhere. And there's lots of other things in your head that you need to be keeping track of. What's also great though is that as a ministry leader, you have a team that you're also leading toward that goal, and so if you have it in a spreadsheet where only you can see it, then the rest of your team is trying to keep that in their head. And I promise your team is not going to keep it in their head. So what I like to say is also like if it's a team goal, then the goal needs to be team visible. It needs to be visible to everybody on your team. And there's a couple of ways you can do that. So churches, you might not have like a central bulletin board for all your volunteers where they go to look at the goals for the year or whatever. So a couple of ways you can keep it visible to your team is to mention it on a regular basis. So mention it in regular email communication with your team. Mention it in onboarding training when you have new volunteers that join. Just say this is the goal we're trying to reach this year, and this is what you're going to be helping us reach toward. Gives them kind of an anchor point of what they're being a part of, what they're reaching for. And also my favorite time to reiterate goals as a ministry is on Sunday mornings when we do our Sunday morning powwow kind of thing, where we talk on Sunday morning before the service starts. Is as we're taking in prayer requests, doing prayer for each other, celebrating what God's doing in that ministry and in the church, and also reiterating what our goals are and what we're trying to reach for together as a team. And so keeping that goal visible for everyone in the team helps keep it top of mind and really helps people to glom onto it and make it part of their everyday thought process.
No, I think that's really great. It's one of the things that I help co-lead small groups at my church, and this is something that we've had to do. So we do a monthly huddle in our groups, and we actually had that monthly huddle last night. And so we've set some goals as far as what we want to achieve, number-wise, as number of group leaders, number of people we're pouring into, things like that. And we kind of have set those based on, people in small groups to the number of people that are actually attending our church. And that's kind of how we're measuring kind of our effectiveness there. But we completely relaunched our small groups, about a year and a half ago. And we've really focused in on making sure that we're helping people to grow. And that's kind of our biggest aspect that we're looking towards now. So in the past, our groups were really relational. We gave a lot of leniency as far as what people can do, what they can teach. And we've really kind of honed in on that because we're working towards specific goals. And so for us as a team, we're meeting every single month. We're kind of going over some of those goals. We're talking about what we can do today that's leading up to those goals that we know we want to hit in 2-3 years from now. And we've, really broken it down to these simple steps. So for us this year, for all of our small group leaders, we want them to be able to go in and pick someone in their group that they're actively pouring into their lives on a weekly basis. So outside of small group, they're meeting with this person, they're trying to disciple them, they're really trying to raise them up as a leader, and they're kind of their one person. So the navigators have this really great idea of, who's your man and who's your woman. And what that means is simply who's the person you're pouring into, who's the person that you're discipling and you're raising up as a leader. And so we've kind of adopted that same mentality. And so every single month, when we're coming into these meetings, we're talking about that aspect of, what progress are we making today to kind of lead us to those goals. And it's been really helpful for us to kind of not just think of these aspirational goals that are 2-3 years away, but how we can actually make an impact on our daily basis in our small groups.
That's awesome. That's awesome. To be able to break down goals like that, again, we could go back to this over and over again, but this is probably the reason we go back to this is because it's the biggest pitfall, I think. And especially when creating organizational goals or team goals, is that these goals tend to be too big and too far out there and hard to accomplish because they're not broken down into more accomplishable small pieces. I know we're getting to kind of to the end of our episode here. Before we cut off, I want to mention here that there is a TrainUp course that covers this exact topic. It's a video course. It's 4 parts. It takes about 15-20 minutes to get through it, to watch all the videos and answer the questions. It's already done for you in the TrainUp library. So with a TrainUp account, you just go in and import that course. It comes with the videos and the questions. It's done, and all you do is just share it from there. With the new feature that like the passwordless login feature that we just rolled out, your volunteers, your leaders won't even have to figure out how to log in or create an account or anything like that. It's just automatic and done for them. And so you can take some of the stuff we talked about today and a lot more in depth in a few other areas as well for that course. Put it in front of your leaders, put it in front of some of your lay leaders, and it'll help them to start thinking strategically about how to create goals without giving them like a really specific, solid, overly structured method for doing it. They can still think creatively within their own mindset and how to create their own goals. But the course kind of goes over some of the best practices and pitfalls and ways to communicate goals for teams. So that's in our TrainUp library.
Awesome. I love that you created that course because it's a nice one to have where you can just kind of import it and go and put it out to your people. And that's one of the biggest things that we've done with TrainUp is trying to think through these ideas that every single church leader needs in their arsenal. And we've created a ton of resources like that. So, I love that. And, with that, you can use the coupon code Thriving to get 50% off that first month if you're not currently a trained up customer. So that's a great resource for you guys to kind of see
And
and work.
50% off your first month. I'm going to interrupt. 50% off your first month. But also, we have a happiness guarantee. So if you sign up and in the first 30 days it doesn't work for you, for whatever reason, no questions asked, you let us know and we'll cancel and refund your even that 50% off. So you get a 50% off, but also you get a refund if it doesn't work for you. So there's no risk.
And I heard another rumor with that as well. You're doing coaching calls now with new signups, right?
I am, yeah. So we're offering coaching calls with all new signups with either me or with Kevin. Usually it happens with me. And what I do is I walk through, and it usually takes about 30 minutes, upwards of an hour, depending on what your challenges are. I'll work with individual ministry leaders or entire staffs. It's really awesome to work with entire staff, though, because we get to cover a lot of different ministry areas and kind of look at the challenge of training from different angles. And what we do is we talk through not just what their challenges are, but also how to implement trained up and kind of address those challenges with trained up, and also in the context of other training scenarios in their church. So I really enjoy those coaching sessions. We do several a week, just because it keeps me close to ministry leaders and opens my eyes to more challenges than just what I personally face in my own ministry.
That's really awesome. And that's one of the things that we love doing. We love getting to connect on those coaching calls. We love getting to have conversations with just pastors and ministry leaders that aren't even necessarily using trained up. And we get to have tons of those conversations every single week. And so if you have questions, if you have comments about some of the things that we've been talking about, please go to trainedup.church, start a conversation with us. Scott or myself will answer those. And we answer every single one. No chat goes unanswered. We love getting to talk back and forth with ministry leaders. We have people that jump on sometimes and mess with us, inside chat that know us well. Those are always fun to get, but head over to trainedup.church. Let us know if there's any questions, any comments, maybe share some of your goals with us. So head over to trainedup.church, share some of your goals with us, ask us some questions. And that's going to be it for today's episode of Thriving Ministry Teams. We hope to see you guys next week, and have a great day.